I wanted to show you today very cool, amazingly engineered mastering compressor from Elysia called the Alpha Master. And at first when you look at it, it's a little bit scary, but we'll go through it and we'll look at it in practice. And actually, the design makes perfect sense. And once you get used to it, you always want to have these controls. So what is mid-side processing? Well, it's an amazing technique where we can separate out what is exactly mono in the track or coming straight down the center, and what is not mono or the subtracted mono, which is the sides or the stereo information which lives on the sides. What's typically down the center? The kick, the bass, snare, lead vocal, clap. What's on the sides? Lots of stereo synths, stereo effects, reverbs, anything that's panned. And of course, there's always some portion of a stereo signal that has the mono content and some portion that has the sides. And what we can do with mid-side processing is we can separate out those two elements, the mid and side element. Sum and difference is the same thing. And we can process them separately, either for sweetening or for corrective purposes. And then we can put Frankenstein back together, and it's as though it never happened, except for everything is much better. And it's funny, I'll never forget the first time someone showed it to me. It blew my mind, and it still blows my mind. Just soloing the sides always blows my mind. So in mastering, in stereo mastering, a very popular common technique is to go into mid-side mode and separate out the mid signal from the side and apply compression just to the mid signal. And the concept here is to create power. So, when we compress properly, we create power. A lot of power comes from compression. And so we will compress the mid signal, but we'll leave the side signal kind of uncompressed and light and airy. And then we can use the gain to balance the two, having independent balancing gain ability. And we can get a very precise and exciting setting for the width. Okay, let's jump in and take a look at this incredible compressor. If you want to buy the actual hardware, I think it's like $10,000. So fantastic that we live in a modern world with these excellent emulations. Okay, so from right to left, these are usual suspects here in compression. We have a threshold, the sensitivity control, the attack control, which controls how quickly the compression is going to react once it's crossed the signal. The release is how quickly it's going to let go after gain reduction. And the ratio, which is the severity of the compression. We also have a niveau filter, which is very, very rare down here, where we see EQ gain and EQ frequency. We have tone controls like EQ built into our compressor. Very, very rare. But it's nice while you're touching up the signal and you're fine-tuning everything to have something right in front of you that is working with the compression is pretty amazing. And it's an interesting style of EQ. It's sort of a tone control where if you add high end, it proportionally cuts the low end. And if you cut high end, it adds low end also proportionally, although not exactly proportionally. So it's an interesting sort of a tone control. And of course, you can turn it off and on here. Over here is very, very useful internal sidechain filter. And you have a high pass or a low pass. And what this does is it allows you to dictate what range of frequencies are triggering the gain reduction or the compression. And in stereo mastering on a big track with a big kick and a big bass and a lot of power in the low end to keep people dancing, we usually want to filter out the low frequencies so they don't induce gain reduction or induce the compression. So that is a very, very useful feature section here. Down here on the low row, we have a wet-dry mix, which is great for parallel processing. And we have wet-dry on both the mid and the side, which is kind of amazing. You can turn on or off the direct signal or on or off the compressed signal, which allows you to sort of solo things and really hear exactly what's going on. And then, of course, you can wet-dry mix it. Here is the gain, which is the output gain. And here with this gain, we're allowed to independently control the level of the mids and the sides, which gives us a very precise stereo width control. Moving over here, we have this little warm button, and this warm button is an optional output transformer. You know, transformerless tends to be clear and clean. Transformers tend to make things fat and chewy. I call them chewy. I think they're chewy. And different transformers have different sounds. Shadow Hills has 3 different transformer output sounds. So you get to sort of know your transformers, but they tend to add a layer of compression on their own, and they tend to fatten and warm up the signal, hence the title warm. Over here is a soft clipping option, and soft clipping is a form of decapitation, cutting off the spiky little heads of peaks, which can smooth out the sound and also create more headroom. And you turn it off or on here, and then you set how much soft clipping you want there. And then you will see the soft clip light up when you're doing it. But use your ears, not your eyes. I've found some little sweet spots where I was barely seeing any soft clipping, but when you went in and out of soft clipping, you certainly heard it. Here is MS mode, mid-side mode, and today we're going to keep that on. Here's the soft bypass that won't make your CPU hiccup, and you can hear smooth bypassing. And here's channel link, which in some stereo modes you might want on, but for mid-side processing you definitely want off. A couple little noteworthy things that took me a second to figure out. The ratios are interesting, from 1.1, which is no compression, all the way to a whopping 2.4. Now, you know, most of us who are doing compression, we see 4-to-1, 5-to-1, 6-to-1, 10-to-1, high ratios. Not always in mastering, but in general. So this is absolutely a dedicated or purposely created mastering compressor, because this 2.4 ratio is still quite gentle. But what I found, which took me a little learning curve, is that there is a world of sound in between 1.3 and 1.7, for example, that I really hadn't thought of in quite that way personally. So this is lots of subtle adjustments here of the severity of your ratio, which is really, really cool. A couple more things, actually. As we skip across the top, there's 2 topologies or designs of compression: feed forward and feed back. If it's in, it's engaged, it's feed forward. If it's out, it's feed back. Feed forward is a little bit of a quicker, more responsive style of compressor design. Sometimes you see it as modern or new. Feedback is more classic. It's a little slower. It allows the initial transients to sort of have impact usually before the compressor grabs it. It's less grabby. And most of the time in mastering, I'm feedback. Feed forward is probably much more useful in mixing, probably a little less useful in mastering, but it depends on what you're doing. Here is this auto fast mode, which allows you to have slow attack times, but still have gain reduction protection against very fast spiky peaks. So you can have a mellow, slow attack, which will allow for the transients of the kick and the bass to really have power, but it will protect you from little spiky things. So that's auto fast on. Same with auto release. It will protect you from really quick dips in hysteresis or the velocity of the release, and it will smooth those out. And you can have variable release times, but then it adds an auto smoothing function as well. And finally, I know I told you it would be a lot. There's a lot of stuff in here, but it all does make sense. Here is our ability to filter the internal sidechain. And if you turn it on here, it took me a while to figure this out. You have a option of a high pass filter or a low pass filter. On the mid, which will be on the left channel, you'd want a high pass filter. You'd want to filter out those lows so they don't cause the compression. The crossover frequency of the filter is here. Usually might want to set it around 300, but it could be anywhere. Sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's higher. Kind of got to set that by ear. And here's how this works. If you want a traditional low cut or high pass filter, you turn it all the way clockwise. And then as you ease back off of it, some of that filtered sidechain signal is allowed back in the sidechain, and it lessens the effect. as you go counterclockwise. So if you like it, but you want a little bit of the lows to trigger the compression, you want to compress the lows a little bit too, you can back off of it. I usually like it set to minus infinity. So there you go. That is the grand tour of the Alpha Mastering Compressor. Okay, after all that talking, let's take a look at the compressor in action. We have a track from Raymond Romero, very cool up-and-coming producer, a Mixmaster Wyatt Academy graduate. And let's jump right in. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to compress the middle, get what we call the shape on the mid section. When I say the middle, I mean the mid from the mid side. And then we'll start to balance a little bit the mid signal and the side signal. Before we do, I think it's cool just to take a quick listen. I'm just going to start it in its default stage here. Make sure it's in the default. And I'm going to go in and out of active. And you can hear that there are input transformers here that are modeled with the hardware that you can't turn off, right? The output transformer, as we said before, you can turn on and off with the warm button. But the input transformers are part of the actual $10,000 hardware, and you can't turn them off. So this is a fat analog compressor. It's not a Pro C2, it's not Pro MB, it's not that super HD crystal clean, clear, transparent, odorless, colorless type of plug-in. This has a personality. So without any compression at all, let's go in and out of bypass with this active button. See if you can just hear the input transformer modeling a little bit. And as I said, transformers in general compress the sound on their own, right? Transformers tend to have some type of compression aspect. They're gathering and organizing voltage, and they concentrate the sound a little bit. And, you know, as you get deeper into the saturation game, you start to train your ear for the different kinds of transformers, API, SSL, Neve, etc. So let's listen first just for the sound of the unit, and then we'll jump right in to put it into action. And what you hear there is just a little bit of an organizing of the low end. It's subtle. If you're listening on earbuds or laptop speakers in a very loud park, you probably won't hear this. But if you have a good system, very good headphones, and you're in a quiet environment, you should absolutely be able to hear it. And it just makes it a little fatter, a little thicker in the low mids and the lows, a little bit of color in the highs and the mids too, a little thickening. You know, it's that analog love. All right, so now let's go to mid-side mode, which is engaged. Let's unlink the channels here, and let's work on the mid section for a second. Okay, so what did we do here? We compressed just the mid signal here. We gave it some threshold. We went for slower attacks to keep the low frequency pulse pulsing. We went for a fast release so that it was bouncy and not too gluey. We adjusted a little bit of the ratio. And then the most important thing we did is we cut the lows off the internal sidechain. And I went in and out of bypass just to show you that if the low frequency dynamics are triggering the compression, it really makes for a kind of a funny pumping, breathing, and weak sound. And we don't want it to be sounding weak. So once again, I'm just going to bypass that really quickly so you can see what that's doing. And here is the totally clockwise high pass filter. Right now I have the crossover set at 150. And you can see what a dramatic difference and how absolutely critical it is that we have this ability to cut the lows off the internal sidechain. We can see here that now we've compacted the energy, we've concentrated the energy in the center, and we have done it in a kind of a sneaky way by really having mostly mid-range and highs inducing the compression. And then with this gain, we can drive that compressed mid-signal straight up the middle, which adds quite a bit of power. Okay, so we've done that. Now, let's go to the gain on the side signal and use it as a stereo width adjuster. And again, we're going to make sure that we're not doing any compression on the sides in this example. We want the compressed energy in the center, and we want these light, airy, uncompressed sides. Okay. So what we're doing here is just sort of soloing the sides. And again, I remember the first time someone soloed the sides for me, it like blew my mind. What do you hear in the sides? You hear reverb, stereo effects, and sounds with a very big stereo spread like the guitars. So using the engage buttons for both the compressed and direct signal, you're able to sort of solo, and you can listen to the processing on the mid and side channels sort of in solo mode. Now, it's cool, it's fun, it's great, but of course, you don't want to make your final adjustments in solo mode. You want to see the entire forest, not just the trees. Now let's go back and see if we can do a couple other little sweetening moves just to finish off this mid-side compression in mastering. So I tried to do two things here. One, I used the warm output transformer option just to see if I liked it. And even though it made it fatter, as I say, transformers tend to compress a little bit, and I liked a little more pulsing low end. I thought it choked it a little bit. I have used it successfully many times, but I didn't really like it on this one. So we're going to go transformerless on the output. And the second thing is this soft clip thing. You notice that I turned it on and I crunched it out on purpose just to hear what crunching is. And we can back off it and just use our ears and see if a little bit of soft clipping works on this track. And I think it's cool. It has sort of a tightening up sound. Even I hear the circuitry as being in, even if I'm not seeing the little clip light go on. But I think it sounds more open without it. So we're going for a tight, powerful, but open sound. So we're going to go transformerless and no soft clipping for now. So one more thing I think is fun to try, which is to go to this niveau filter here on the high frequencies. Turn this on. And we can add some gain here. And this is going to boost highs and cut lows off the sides. So a typical mid-side mastering EQ thing to do would be to roll low frequencies off the sides. We're going to do that very same thing, but inside our Elysia Alpha mastering compressor, which is cool. It's cool to have it right there. Now, to extend the frequencies, we're going to add a factor of 10 here so that 300 becomes 3K, and this is going to become a much more useful crossover for us. So let's do a little bit of EQing of our uncompressed side signal, just to maybe brighten it up a little bit, give it a little shimmer. So there you go. The magic of mid-side compression in mastering. This Elysia Alpha mastering compressor is amazing. It's got a sound to it. It's got a personality to it. It dictates a workflow that gets good results. And I'm an absolute fan of it. Lots of transformer options, sidechain filtering, the Niveau filter, wet-dry mixing. You could go on and on. But this is a great mastering tool, lots of control and lots of analog personality. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this demonstration. Millions of possibilities here. We'll keep it coming from Mixmaster Wyatt Academy. Go to mixmasterwyatt.com. Look at all the courses that we're offering, both for people who want a teacher and classmates and those who want to self-study and binge watch on their own. We are updating things every single week, several times a week. New plugins, new techniques, new workflows. I'm sure we have something for you to sharpen up your mixing and mastering, to inspire you. We also have sound design and composition now, also available as self-study courses for those with busy schedules, unpredictable schedules, particular time zones that are tricky. I hope you enjoyed this. We'll keep them coming.